Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Shelly Epperly here. Today is Monday, March the 4th, 2019. It's 8 p.m. in New York. It's 5 p.m. in Los Angeles. It's after midnight, 1 a.m. in London. Sydney, Australia, you're at around 12 noon, I believe. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I've been practicing today, Shelly. I've been practicing feeling good in the face of not feeling good. And it's been a reminder how when you're not at your peak and you're kind of trying to climb your way back, it can be quite a climbing your way back. And you kind of get reminded over and over again just from the way you're feeling. Oh, geez, this doesn't quite feel right. I got to find that better feeling thought. I got to find that new thing to focus on. It kind of like dangles in your face, if you know what I mean. So anyway, that's how my day's been going. How's your day been going?
A little bit of the same. I'm just kind of dealing with, like my physical body and what I'm eating, and I've really been kind of just neglecting that and just eating a lot of crap, for lack of a better word. And definitely have been feeling it the last couple of days. And today I'm just like, okay, enough is enough. Just kind of the same thing, but more on a physical feeling. Like my body's going, if you keep doing this, we're just going to go downhill, So, yeah. So today I just made a few better choices, and I'm just going to continue with that and treat my body with more love and respect and take better care of it and feel better physically.
Yeah. Well, one kind of feeds the other, every pun intended, because when you're not feeling good, you tend to feed yourself as a way to kind of compensate for it. And so it just kind of, it adds to the spiral in a sense, which is, that's not fair,
Food is my drug. Like that, as far as like addiction wise or whatever, I have a sweet tooth, and I just in the last couple of years have developed some digestive issues, so I have to be careful with it. And sometimes I'm feeling really good physically, so I'm just like, yeah, I'll just go ahead and have that other stuff. And, and then, like 2:00 in the morning, I wake up, groaning and regretting everything I did. So it's just, that's kind of how it all conspired. And today I'm just like, okay, that's enough. I don't like feeling like this.
Well, it definitely is a reminder for me every time. I was going through a little bit of not binge eating, but I was eating stuff that I probably shouldn't have eaten today, as a way to kind of compensate for not feeling good. And it's always a reminder every single time. And I was especially feeling it toward the end of the afternoon, because it was a somewhat eventful day. One really good thing happened today that I really can't talk about on the air, but it was a good thing. But nevertheless, there was a lot of stress that was involved in the day too. And by the time late afternoon rolled around, it was like I was just reaching. I was reaching for, better feeling, better energy, and all that kind of thing. And that's what made me think, tonight as we're starting the program, boy, that when you get in that place where you just can't seem to get to the good feel, I don't know. I think because we're deliberate creators and we focus on it so much, I really notice it now. I didn't notice it, 20 years ago, I just didn't feel good. That's all. There was no conscious thought around it. It was just like, oh, Jesus, another one of those days. But now it's almost like, it's a great benefit to understand how this stuff works, but it's also like you can't get away with anything anymore, because now I'm the one who's doing this. I'm the one who's creating this stuff. Oh, doggone it. Right. Tripped myself again. So, yeah. That's where you have to kind of find your way back. And that's what a lot of today was about. Louise was feeling it too. We both had different things going on, but I could tell she was feeling it. She was feeling the challenge of what we're dealing with. And that's when you really, really, well, for one way to look at it is you actually have the best opportunity to practice really applying your attention, focusing, kind of like what I went through last year with the injuries I was dealing with and overcoming those injuries. And it takes a lot of concentration when you're hurting to to focus past it. And I'm realizing I got to kind of do the same thing here because I'm dealing with stuff and this is stuff that has history for me. This is stuff that ties back to, my youngest days, and I recognize it. I can feel it. I can tell that it really does, and it's probably ties into the biggest issue for me dating back, which isn't really big compared to some people. I mean, some people have been abused or children of alcoholics or whatever, and mine's nowhere near anything like that. But it's enough for me to be getting on with, that's for sure. So, yeah,
all of those things become blocks. I mean, no matter how severe they are, they still become blocks for you or whatever. And for me, this whole thing with the eating, so I started this intermittent fasting back in May, and so I started out just eating 6 to 8 hours a day, and as towards the end of the summer, I blocked it down to about 4 hours a day, and I just felt so much better. I didn't feel like I was starving myself. I was getting full faster. I felt really good. And so it went on until October when we went to Disneyland. And so when we went there, it's just hard to eat on this little block of time when you're on everybody else's schedule. And so I wasn't going to be that person. There was 9 of us that went, and it was I'm just going to eat carefully, but I'll eat with everybody else. And, well, of course, we're at Disneyland, we're eating out, I kind of overindulged. And then, went from October to November, I tried to pull it together, and then the holidays. And so, for the last couple months, I've just been I need to get back on track. I need to get back on track. So when this happens, when I have these days, the last couple of days where I know I'm eating stuff that's going to make me feel bad, and then I feel bad. And then I have a day like today where I'm just enough is enough. So for me, it's okay, the lesson there is I've been asking for this. I've been asking for what, how am I going to get back on track? How am I going to get back on track? And, in a roundabout way, through inspired action of eating food I shouldn't be eating, I found my way back on track. And, this is the first day, and I'm okay, I'm going to eat well today, and I'm going to eat well tomorrow. And I'm, preparing, in my head, tomorrow I'm going to eat this, this, and this, and I'm going to cook some chicken tonight, so I have that on hand, and blah, blah, blah. But, so that's how I go into it. When something like this happens, I'm just okay, I asked for this. I've been asking for this for, the last month. How do I get back on track? And it's okay. Because I know when I get focused, I can do this with no problem. But it's just that, I said, food is my drug. So it's quitting smoking or quitting drinking or whatever. It's I just have to stop instead of oh, I'm only going to have a couple sweets today. No, because I'll eat the whole bag. I'll eat the whole cake. That's just the kind of person, how I am with food. So I realize that. So.
Well, it's good though. You recognize it. You know the pattern, so you know what to stay away from, which is good. That's part of it right there. Just being mindful, being aware. That's really important.
Yep.
The other thing I found, especially last week, I was really noticing is that on those days where I know I'm not feeling it, I try to make it a practice not to do anything, quote, important, unquote. I try not to pay any attention to the stuff that I've been trying to attract. I try not to get into all that because I know if I do that, I'll be doing it from a negative perspective. I'll be doing it from a low vibration perspective. And so I count that as a victory. That's a good thing. I kind of did that today too. I mean, there was something I really wanted to do, but I wasn't feeling it. And so I just kind of turned it off for the day. Said, you know what? I'll deal with that tomorrow. Not going to deal with it today. Today, my job is just to feel better. If I can feel better to the point where I get there tomorrow, then that's a good thing.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. I do. I have days like that where it's if I push any farther into what I'm trying to accomplish today, it's just going to be a wreck. So I'm just going to stop.
Yep.
And, I'm in a position in my life where I can do that. I can just stop and go watch some TV or go, do, on Facebook. I don't have to be listing or, whatever. That doesn't have to happen right now. So Yeah, I totally understand that, where you just have those surrender days kind of, where it's like, okay, I just need to do something to feel better. I don't have to push this hard.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the only thing that's a little bit discouraging along that line is I've had a lot more of them lately than I like. But actually, now that I think about it, that's not necessarily true, because from November through the end of December, when we were dealing with Louise's illness, I was having them every day. So I got to take that back. No, actually, it's gotten better since then. See, now there's an example of it, right? Now, my mind had already programmed the idea, oh, no, things have gotten worse. And they actually hadn't. They'd actually gotten better. But because I was in the negative spiral, I was thinking about the worst side. But as I look at it objectively, no, actually, there have been quite a few good days since the first of the year. So, yeah, it's amazing how easily we forget that stuff. But it also shows how important it is to remember it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really ingrained.
Is it that it's ingrained, or is it that just we're stuck in a vortex where we're focusing on negative stuff, so we just get more negative stuff? I mean, maybe it's a combination.
Well, I think that there is that, but you know, so many of us have been raised in that. Oh well, you know, when's the other shoe gonna fall? Like Murphy's Law. You know, so I think part of it is ingrained. It's programmed, and it's easy to fall back on when you're not being a deliberate creator and you're not being conscious of what your thoughts are. It's easy to go, you know what, this just keeps getting worse and worse, you know?
But that's the exact thing we have to reverse, though. That's it, right there. Keep thinking it's getting worse and worse.
It's getting better and better.
Yeah.
It's getting better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, once we recognize that it's getting better and better, celebrating it. Because the tendency, especially if you're not feeling great, the tendency is, okay, I just noticed this thing that's actually better than I thought it was. So it's like, okay, I just noticed it. Fine. Now I'm going to go back to feeling miserable again, which is counterproductive. It doesn't actually work out very well. Whereas when we celebrate, oh, wow, there's been a whole lot going on that's been good lately. I'm going to get excited about that. I'm going to feel good about that. I'm going to focus on that and say, whoa, this is good stuff. And in the process, I'll actually feel better. That's the thing to remember. That's what I keep trying to remember. So this is helpful. Thank you for talking about this with me. This is good. this is how we turn it around, right? Oh, yeah, it's a mental game. It's all a mental game. Awesome. So we don't really have anybody asking questions, but what was that?
Did you get to that email?
Oh, that's right. We had an email. Yeah, let's see what the email is. It was coming in literally. It arrived just as we were getting ready to go on the air. Now let's see what it's all about. It's somebody who's reaching out to me about they want to do some sort of a collaboration. I'm not sure it really has anything to do with the podcast at all. Hard to tell. I'll have to look into that a little bit further. But it's not what I thought it was. It's not somebody saying, hey, you know, I got a problem going on. Maybe you can help me with it. So unfortunately, we won't get that out of it. But what we can do is we can kind of bring up some of the kinds of stuff that we deal with, and let's see if we can attack some of them. You know, just hypothetical questions that have real world implications, that kind of thing. So let's see.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I don't think it's going to be really hard to come up with them. The tricky part is just turning them into hypotheticals rather than talking about the real thing. But other than that, I don't think it's going to be hard to come up with the questions. So, okay, first one. Yeah. How do you, when you are in a place like you're in right now, or like I'm in right now, I'm not going to put it on you. I'm going to put it on me because I'm the one who put myself there. What's your favorite way to climb out of it? I mean, you were talking about, for instance, how you've been dealing with food issues in the last couple of days or so, and you kind of have been changing your mindset, saying, no, I'm not going to go anywhere near them. I'm not even going to give myself a little bit of doses. But how do you start turning that mindset around so you can start doing that?
I make what I need more available to me. So, like, yesterday we went to Costco and I bought some chocolate-covered dried mangoes, which are just delicious, and I love them so much. Uh-huh. And so, like, tomorrow morning, when I take my son to school, I'm going to give them to him and say, put these in your backpack and share them with your friends all day because I don't want them in the house anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's stuff like that. And then like cooking chicken, you know, so I know that like tomorrow I can have a chicken salad or, you know, a chicken stir fry or whatever. I bought some broccoli slaw. Do you know what broccoli slaw is?
No, I don't know that.
Like, it's like they take the, you can get it like in the produce, like by the salads and stuff, and it's just like this, like julienne, it's like the broccoli stalks and carrots and mixed together, and you can like use it like in a stir fry or just like you can just eat it raw like a salad.
No. Okay.
So I got that because I really, really like that with like chicken and stuff. So I just know that I just set myself up, like, you know, actually set myself up, you know, not just mentally. Mentally, I just, give myself a few minutes. Like if I'm like, ooh, I really want one of those pieces of, you know, chocolate covered mango. I give myself a few minutes and go, is that really worth it? Or can I go have like a piece of cheese instead? Cause for me, it's low carb, like getting off of all the sweets and stuff is healthy for me and it feels good for me. Cause I still eat a lot of veggies and stuff. So I balance it out. I'm not just eating, you know, meat and cheese all the time, but so it's like, okay, what's the healthier thing? And then, like I said, like just getting it out of the house. And I know there's certain things that I can bring into the house that, I won't eat even though it's sweets because I just don't like it. And so that's kind of how I set myself up. But when I'm having a day like you where you're basically just kind of climbing out of the hole and I always think of like a 2-year-old just down on the ground, just having a fit, you know?
Not a bad analogy, actually.
Because that's how I feel when I'm having those days. There's like actually a GIF, you know, the little things that you can put on Facebook or whatever, the little like short movies or whatever that keep going over and over. And it's a little kid, and she's just on the ground, she's just kicking and screaming and I just love that one because that's exactly how I feel. Like I'm just having a little tizzy fit. But, I like to watch TV. Like that's my like out, you know, some people like to go for a walk. Some people like to play with their pets. Some people, you know, it's like whatever makes you feel better. You know, when my kids were little, I'd want to play with them, but now that they're 16 and 21. They don't really want to play with me anymore.
Funny how that works.
But, yeah, it's just weird. I'm like, come on, let's play a game. Leave me alone, Mom. But yeah, so like I love reality TV. We've talked about that before. And so I'll just sit and watch, you know, there's been days where I know, like, I don't even want to go anywhere. Like, I don't want to get in the car because I feel like I'm in such a messed up place emotionally that I don't even, like, I'm worried I'm going to attract some, you know, a car wreck or something, you know? And so I'm just like, I'm not even going anywhere today. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. And, you know, I don't have those days very often, but, you know, and there's those days where like I get on eBay to list stuff and my internet's not working or eBay's got a bunch of glitches and, you know, it just happens and I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to move on to the next thing. What, you know, I need to do the dishes or I need to, you know, I need to photograph a bunch of stuff. So it's just gotten to the point where instead of getting super frustrated and just focusing on that and letting that be my day, I just try to move on from that. So.
Yeah, that's good.
I just kind of, and I kind of look at it as the universe just going, you're not supposed to do this right now. You're not, you know, you might not be in the right state of mind or whatever. So go do this and come back to it, you know? So.
That makes sense. Yeah. You mentioned food and actually, as I think about it, Louise has been doing that kind of thing lately. Over the weekend, she made spaghetti sauce and today she made a beef stew and I forget what she said, something else she wants to make. I can't remember what it was. But, you know, comfort food type stuff that hangs around for a bit and you can reheat and reuse and so forth. And that's one of her favorite ways to deal with things like this is just to find stuff that's comfortable, that is good for you, you know, not the junk food, but stuff that makes you feel better. And you also, I want to thank you. You actually said something that was in my subconscious mind. I know it was. I recognized it from earlier today, but I didn't get it into my conscious mind. You talked about taking a walk. Well, that's one of my favorite things to do. And do you know that consciously I didn't think about it once today, but subconsciously I did. And I can remember exactly when I did it. Because we had 6-7 inches of snow this morning. So we had to clear all that out. And it was one of those weird days where we get the snow, and then by mid-afternoon, half of it's melted. So it started cold, snowed, and then warmed up and all that kind of thing. A lot of sun.
Yeah.
But because it had melted all the way down, my usual way to go walking is to go out on the local Rails to Trails path, which is not clear. It's covered with snow right now. So my subconscious mind was saying, I really want to go walking, but my mind was saying, yeah, but it's all covered with snow. Completely forgetting the fact that I have a gym membership. I can go over to the gym. I can, get on a treadmill. I can, do other kinds of exercise there. And if I get on the treadmill, it's not as good as going out on a sidewalk, but at least I can walk. I can get out there. And I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
So it's a substitute, but it's a good one. And I want to thank you for reminding me of it because I'd forgotten.
No problem.
Yeah. It's amazing. There's an example, right? I mean, this is what happens when you get into that negative spiral. You forget things. You forget the stuff that you use to get out. That's a big one for me. And it just left my mind. It left my brain entirely. So, yeah, important stuff.
I think that when you're in that state, they call it like the whole, like caveman mentality when you're running from the T-Rex or whatever. When you're stressing about something, like your body goes into that. Your body goes into that mode, whether it's stressing about your internet not working or some financial situation or, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Like you go into that fear and that survival and the stress so when you're in that state, you can't be creative. You can't be open to anything creative because you're just like shut down and tense. Do you ever listen to Joe Dispenza? I know I've mentioned him before.
I've never listened to them. I've never heard him on a podcast or radio or whatever, but I've read some of his stuff. I've read his books.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm more of a like watcher and listener on YouTube, and that's where I've heard him and stuff. And I just love what he says because he talks about, like a deer gets chased by, a mountain lion and she gets away from him. And then 15 minutes later, she's eating the grass and she's like, she's forgotten about it. She's back. And so we don't have that luxury of forgetting about that stress. We, get PTSD and oh my God, we're going to talk about the mountain lion. We're going to tell our friends about it.
The mountain lion, right.
Yeah. And so he talks about that and he's like, so it starts out like, well, why are you in a bad, why are you having a hard day? Oh, well, I'm just going to be ridiculous and use the mountain lion, but oh, I got chased by a mountain lion today, and oh my God, that's horrible. And then, a week goes by and it's like, why are you in a bad mood still? And, well, I got chased by a mountain lion a week ago
right.
And I'm still, in that state of freaking out about it. And then, months go by and years go by and pretty soon it just becomes like, that's your programming.
Right.
Like I'm just scared all the time. I can't walk on that path. I can't go outside, however ridiculous it gets or whatever. But he says eventually it just becomes your personality.
Oh,
like
sure.
Like if it's just like, oh, well, yeah, she's scared of everything because that mountain lion chased her 10 years ago, and it's like, we bring all that stuff with us. And I just love the way he says that because it's like, wouldn't it be great if we could have a stressful situation and then 15 minutes later be back to creating or whatever, but it just doesn't work that way. But that's the goal is to have those situations, those stressful situations that feel like contrast and negativity and then go, oh, well, that happened because of blah, blah, blah. And now I'm going to go back over here and have a good day and keep doing what I'm doing to make my life happy and enjoy things. And then, so that's like the goal is to get to that place where you can have that stressed out situation. You can have your car break down or you can, get a diagnosis or whatever, and then, an hour later be like, oh, well, there's so many other things that are so great, and that's going to turn out great too.
Yes. Well, that is the goal for sure. And what you're really describing there is how default behavior works, default feeling, default experience, as Abraham describes it.
Right.
That's where we're not being deliberate creators. We're just going with whatever comes our way and reacting to it. And especially if it's got a negative component, then we're not only going to react to it, but we're going to continue to react to it because, like you said, it just became part of the mental process. And so a week later, we still got chased by the mountain lion. That was a week ago, but hey, I'm still playing it in my head. Why not? Because I haven't taken control and said, you know what, I'm going to decide what I'm going to focus on instead. And it's not always easy to change the focus, but it's always worthwhile. And the good news is when we are practicing on a regular basis, these kinds of days don't happen so often. I mean, this is not, late. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's been quite a bit lately because of what happened with Louise's illness, but we're past that. That part is gone. She's pretty much back to where she was. She's maybe a little bit of improvement left to go, but for the most part, I mean, she's able to do stuff that she was able to do before. So the progress has been made. And yet there's that little piece of the mind that keeps wanting to go back to, yeah, but she was sick. Yeah, but we had to deal with a whole lot of stuff. Like, no. She's doing better. That's the thing to focus on. That's the thing to keep reminding myself. No, there's a lot of good that's been going on here. I mean, Christmas Eve, she was in the hospital and we weren't sure what was going on. And, was she going to be on drugs for the rest of her life and trapped in a bed and so forth? Now she's back to living again. This is great. This is great news.
Yeah.
Just got to remember it.
Yeah.
This is really great news. So, by the way, I want to mention too. I want to mention to people who are listening on the live stream, we're doing a sort of a free-form conversation about what goes on with law of attraction and being deliberate creators. But if you have a particular question or a topic you want us to address, just type it into the comment section. We'll be glad to bring it up. But until you do that, we'll just keep going with what we're talking about here. But feel free if there's something maybe there's something that is haunting you, maybe there's some challenge you're dealing with. Tell us about it. We'll be glad. It's easy. We love giving advice. That part's fun. That's how I climb back out of my hole.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you were going to say next.
I was just going to say, in those times of like despair or negativity or contrast or whatever, there's also lessons in that. Like there, you can look back and go, it's way better now and we don't have to dwell on that. But there's also so many lessons in that, like what did you guys learn from that whole situation? What could you do better if that sort of thing happens again? Just like being attacked by the mountain lion, like from now on, you're going to be hyper alert. You're not going to just be like strolling down the trail or whatever. You're going to be in your eyes and your ears, senses, alert and stuff. So I just feel like there's just like so many lessons in all of that,
Well, there are.
Even on those darkest days.
When we were going through it, leading up until November, especially late October into November, we were in default mode that entire time. Just kind of waiting for Louise to feel better. And she didn't. She kept getting worse and worse. And as she got worse and worse, we just kept waiting for her to get better, but we kept watching her get worse and worse. I was watching her, she was experiencing it. So we were both in that default sliding mode. And then we ended up going to a local clinic, a walk-in type clinic, and they suggested, they took some quick tests, saw some stuff going on, they suggested getting advanced help and so forth. And that set us on a path that basically put us through a bit of a roller coaster. But, and this is the good part, despite or perhaps because of the fact that some of the things we were being told about at that point were pretty darn scary. I mean, on the same order of being chased by the mountain lion, only in this case it was health chasing her down and possibly with really dire consequences. Well, when we were faced with that, we rebounded beautifully. I mean, talk about rockets of desire. We were both on the same track. We didn't even have to communicate to each other, although we did. But we were both on the same track, like, no way we're going to let this defeat us. No way this is going to drag her down. No way. I mean, it was just this bounce. It just, And we had no idea how it was going to work. We had no clue how it was going to work out at all. But we were just determined that it was going to. And we rode that, and we milked it, and we just kept going with it and going with it. Like, I don't care what the doctors are telling us. I don't care what the misdiagnoses are, and we were getting plenty of misdiagnoses. I don't care what any of that is. We were both saying basically the same thing. This is not going to be our life from now on. Our life is going to be a really good one. It's going to be healthy. And by God, it was, and which is pretty cool. So there was actually, you're right. That contrast that we were in it was pretty deep contrast. It was pretty severe. Mm-hmm. But the lesson that we got out of it was all we need is to go in a little bit too deep, and boy, do we want to bounce out real fast. It's kind of like the guy who got thrown into the fire pit. He wanted to get out as fast as humanly possible. You didn't have to think twice about it, right?
Yep.
So let's see. No real questions coming through. So I'm going to throw another question at you. And I don't know if I've told you, I have a technique that I've been using lately, and sometimes with good effect. I don't necessarily have a question in mind. I just open my mouth and see what the question is that comes out. And so I'm going to see if I can do it again tonight. Okay. So, when you find yourself going through a day where, you're kind of in the in-between area, you're not feeling bad, but you're not feeling great. Do you find that that's a time where you start to do that slide? And if so, what's your way of reversing it? Are you able to be mindful and find a way to turn it around, or do you have to slide for a bit before you make the change?
Usually what happens is someone asks me how my day is going, and that's when I get conscious of it. So like when I pick up my son from school in the afternoon, we just do that. I'm like, how was your day at school? You know, and then he's always like, so how was your day, Mom? You know, so today I was like, it was okay. And he was like, just okay? Cause usually I'm like, I had a great day, you know, and I was just like, so that kind of made me conscious that, you know, I just kind of had an okay day today. You know, I wanted to do some, like, you know, talking about things holding you back. I wanted to do some photographing, and in the bedroom that I do all my photographing, and I have all my backdrop and my lighting and everything. There's blinds in there, and the way the sun's coming through at a certain time of the day right now, there's like little dots across the carpet where I do my flat lays, you know, for photographing. So I can't do it. Because I just have these dots across everything. And so I was like all ready to photograph, and I went upstairs and started setting everything up and turned my lights on, and I looked down and there's, you know, those sun dots across, and I'm like, okay, now, you know, so I didn't do all my photographing until like 2:00 today because I didn't do it early enough. And, you know, and so it was just like things like that. Like I really wanted to get that done and start and list the whole day, and I just couldn't, you know, and so, you know, just realizing like, yeah, I had an okay day. And actually it was a great day. Like I got the dishes done. I got some cooking done. I, you know, caught up on a few shows I wanted to watch, and, you know, got some laundry done and stuff. So, like, it wasn't like a great day. It wasn't like I had some great adventure or whatever, but it's a pretty great day because I have time freedom, you know, because I work for myself. Right. You know, so when you like turn it around and go, wait a minute, you know, like I had a pretty darn good day. It just didn't work out exactly the way I wanted it to. So I think the answer to your question is unless I'm just having a really crappy day, I don't really think about it until, like, I have a minute to sit down, or like I said, like somebody says, well, how's your day going? And then I'm like, oh, it's okay. And then I start backtracking. Wait a minute, it's pretty darn good, you know? So. Okay.
So you're able to catch it. If it's kind of in the Midland area, you can catch that pretty quickly. Okay. Because what was happening with me today was that the day started out pretty well, actually, because I do the morning podcast with Louis D'Souza. And that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughing, a lot of joking. It was really good. And then after the podcast, Louise and I had a meeting with somebody, and it was a good meeting. It was an important meeting, and it went well. But from that point on, it seemed like the little things started to pile up. And that's what I mean when I said it kind of starts middling and then starts to slide. And I was really experiencing that phenomenon where you don't change your focus, and so the little things lead to more little things, which lead to more little things. And by like 3:00 in the afternoon, I have a web server. I host websites for people. And my web server started producing some, I won't even try to explain what they were. I guess it's too technical, but it started producing some results that it should not really produce. I mean, it was doing things that were not normal. And I think it was because of a recent update to the software that happened. But I had to start dealing with this, and in the middle of dealing with it, I wasn't feeling all that great, and the cats were looking for attention. I didn't really feel like I could give them the attention. I'm starting to get, a little gritty and a little bit angry and so forth. And then another problem comes in, and it was just like one little problem after another. No disasters, just one little thing after another. It was just kind of like, the little thing that just kind of keeps drilling into you, like the dentist drill. It just keeps coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. And it just kept getting worse and worse, so that by the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was exhausted just from dealing with all those little things. And that's why I was asking about, if you find yourself sliding, how do you deal with it? But you answered it very nicely. You never get to the point where it's going into that slide. You just catch it and you're like, oh, okay, things are going pretty good, and I'm just going to go with the fact that things are going pretty good. So
my question to you is, in that slide, are you conscious of it? Or are you going, I really need to pull myself out of this, but I just don't have the energy to do it right now?
Usually I am. Today I wasn't. And I think that's one reason I'm focusing on this. Today, I don't know. Today, there was a piece of me that just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't know exactly what. And even having that good podcast this morning with Louie, that helped a lot. But I didn't hang on to it. Normally I hang on to that energy. I can carry it through the day. Today I just didn't hang on to it. And I'm not sure why. You mentioned how, we carry stuff from the past. And I do know there was like one overarching theme that ties back to my past that looking back, I can see I was carrying that through. And I've been carrying it through actually for some time now. It's been showing up a lot over the last 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. So now the thing that I don't know is why... how do I want to explain it? I don't really want to go into the details of what the thing is, but why is it that that particular thing plays out in this particular way? Why it's always this one little way that it plays out, and what can I do to change that? Why is that such a big pattern for me? It does seem to be a pattern that goes way back, but I haven't gotten really clear why that happens. And so when I don't have a clear...
I have a question without like, you don't need to divulge whatever it is or whatever, but was it something, when it happened, was it something that was just kind of slowly drilled into your
well, that's part of the question.
Or was it like a catastrophic, like an earthquake, or was it like something that you heard throughout the year?
No, it was dribbled in over time. The question is, was it drilled into me by somebody else, or was it drilled into me by me? And that's the part I can't quite iron out. It was not a catastrophic event. It was a little annoyance thing. It was basically a confidence destroying thing. And as I noticed today especially, and I've seen this before as I've looked back, how I played out this one lack of confidence thing over and over and over in my life. And it set me back in a lot of different ways, in terms of, reaching my goals and achieving my dreams and all that kind of thing. And I got to meditate on it. I got to get into it a little bit more and say, why is this pattern repeating? There's something going on there.
So that whole thing with, and I've mentioned her before, Christine Marie Sheldon. She does the abundance blocks and the clearings and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just going to tell you a little bit about her meditation, which I just absolutely love. So you just get into a meditative state, and she brings you, she talks you through it, but whatever your method is to just get in that state. And then when you're in that state pretty fully, just ask yourself, how old was I when that happened, and where did it come from? And whatever the answer is that comes into your head, your subconscious is answering that question for you, because it knows.
Okay.
It knows where that came from. It knows if it came from your mom saying it and you adopting it, or if something happened in your life that you adopted it, that you weren't good enough, or, whatever it was. But that's how she brings you to that, is she gets you in a meditative state, and then she says, now ask yourself, how old were you the first time you heard that, and who did you hear it from? And that, brings you, because you're still conscious, even when you're meditating, you're still conscious of what, is going on. And then that brings you to the conscious to the conscious awareness or whatever of when that happens, you can go, oh yeah, that was my mom's, or that happened because Uncle Joe, you know, lost his job and you heard mom talk about what a loser he was, and then your mom compared you to Uncle Joe at some point in your life because you couldn't, you know, you didn't go get that job, or
right.
you know, whatever it is, like that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and then that gets brained like, oh, I'm just like Uncle Joe and he couldn't pull his life together, and you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying any of that is what's going on with you.
No, I understand.
But that's just like an example, like, of where that came from. And then, you know, I'm not so clear on the clearing part of it, but I feel like when you're conscious of that, when that comes up for you, then you can go, oh, that, I don't have to feel that way because that wasn't mine.
Yeah.
That was somebody else's, or I put myself in that position a long time ago and that's not who I am anymore, or whatever. So I don't know if that'll help you.
No, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. That's how, well, most of the stuff that we dredge up like that doesn't take a whole lot to clear. I mean, there are a few things that are, and they're usually the more catastrophic things. Those are the ones that can be harder to clear just because they have such a big charge attached to them. But like this kind of stuff, this kind of dribbly stuff, that doesn't usually have a huge charge attached to it. It's just sort of, it's a charge that kind of accumulates over time, but it's going to be easier to dissolve that kind of thing just by identifying, like you said, you know, where it came from and then getting a feel for, well, it wasn't really my thing. And, you know, I just kind of adopted this thing. Oh, well, that means I can let go of it and so on and so forth. It's just kind of, you play with it like that, it kind of dissolves in your fingers and kind of disappears. The ones that don't disappear are the ones that have the big, big charge. You know, you were beaten as a kid, or you were sexually abused, or your parents were drunks, or you know, you were constantly moving from place to place because your father kept losing the job, or you know, whatever, stuff like that.
Right.
That's the stuff that's where a therapist comes in with stuff like that, because that's the stuff that's hard to let go of. And not that you can't do it yourself. I mean, clearly you can. In fact, I have.
Yeah. It does help to have someone that knows what they're doing to
absolutely
pull you through that.
Yeah, because the less time that you focus on it, the better. That's the interesting thing, though, is realizing that it almost doesn't matter whether it was traumatic or not. Just the fact that we keep focusing on it, our subconscious mind perhaps keeps drawing us back to it, and that's actually what activates. That's what makes it powerful over time. I mean, Abraham talks about how if you focus on a thought for at least, and the time seemed to vary, 17 seconds, 16 seconds, 14 seconds. If you focus on it that long, it generates enough of a vibration strength that it will, the universe will deliver another similar thought. And you do that for a total of 68 seconds or 60 seconds, or depending on what you're measuring it, a minute or so. Then it'll actually start to manifest something. So the vibration kind of gets stronger over time. And just as we can have a traumatic event that produces a big vibration right from the beginning, so also we can build the vibration over time with the dribbling effect. The small thing just kind of, we just keep going back to it. And in that sense, it does get a strong vibration over time. So it's kind of a reminder that, well, it works both ways. Yeah, it works with the negative stuff, the stuff we don't like, but it also works with the positive stuff. So if I can continue to, first clear some of that stuff and then, pick one thing like walking or one of the things I like to do and just focus and focus and focus and focus and focus, I can build up that kind of vibration too, which is ultimately what Abraham's trying to teach us to do anyway, is keep our focus where we want it to be, not where we don't want it to be.
Well, and I think that when you recognize that consciously where that little dribble came from, over the years, that when you fall into it, you're just going throughout your day and you think, oh, I should do that. Oh, no. And then, no, I can. Mm-hmm. Like, just that's when you start, flipping that switch where it's like, oh, I can do that. I don't have to be that way. That's not who I really am. And that's where to me, that's like where the magic happens. When you start doing that, so that starts becoming your habit instead of like, oh, I can't do that because I can't learn that, or I can't, that for me, that's my thing. I'm like, I don't, like, my husband and I are like we're going to start doing some different reselling stuff, with the goal being getting him out of his 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to learn. And I'm so good with what I'm doing with the reselling because I've been doing it for like 20 years, you know,
Right.
so I've been, you know, rolling with all the changes with eBay and PayPal. And now I've got a couple other, you know, places that I'm selling on and I'm getting really good with them. And then we're going to do this whole different thing and it's this whole, like a whole different products and whole, you know, a whole different way of selling them and stuff. And it's like, you know, part of me is just like, oh, that's just like I tighten up, you know, I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. I just want to keep doing this. And I'm finding myself even while trying to learn that, I'm going at what I already know harder, almost like, okay, I don't have time for that. So I'm going to do this and do good at it so I don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And like last night we were watching some videos and stuff on it and I was like, I hope you take the, you know, I told him, I hope you take this and really run with it.
Right.
Because he's getting really excited about it. And I'm just like, yeah, it's exciting and there's a lot of potential there, but I'm still hanging on to this over here, you know? So yeah, so it's like, that's my thing where I'm like, I don't want to really learn something new because I'm, you know, and I think that's pretty normal for a lot of people, you know, but.
Well, I think it's especially.
It's like, no, I keep having to put.
I think it's especially noble. I think it's especially normal for somebody later on in life because I'm in my 60s now, and if I was in my 20s and 30s when I had a dream that I wanted to kind of go after, I was enthusiastic, like, oh, this is going to work, this is going to be great. Now I get a lot of stuff playing in my mind, like, well, it's too late. Even though I know perfectly well it's not too late, but that little tape plays. Oh no, it's too late. I mean, you're burned out. You're a burned out shell. It's not going to happen. You just don't have the passion that you did when you were in your 20s and 30s. And there's always that little voice that says, bullshit. But it's a small voice. Yeah. And you have to kind of bring it to the surface like, no, you're wrong. You can get passionate right now. Yeah, it can really happen right now. You really can, you know?
Yeah, well, the truth is, like, what you know now about the law of attraction and using it correctly, you have a million times more potential to do something like that than you did in your 20s or 30s. You know what I mean? Like,
there's another phenomenon that goes on with it too.
So much better.
When we start a project, especially if it's something new, something like you were describing how, oh no, I've got my comfort thing over here. I do this well. I don't really want to try to do this new thing. Anytime that we're doing something new, it's kind of like somebody who's taking up painting for the first time. And I think of painting because David McCullough, the biographer, was talking on a recent biography about him on TV about how if you want to be a painter, you have to paint. So that means the first time you get a canvas or you get a piece of paper and you get your paints and you start painting and it looks like crap. And so you do the next painting, it looks like crap. But over time, as you do more and more of them, you get better and better and better until finally it starts to look like a painting. You have to go through the crap in order to get to the painting. And you can never get to the painting until you go through the crap. You have to. That's the only way to really learn it. You can't learn it from a book. You can't learn it from being taught. Right. You have to actually put the paint onto the paper or onto the canvas. And I think the same thing is true for whenever we are trying something that's really new, where I've got this new project, okay, never done this before. And the first few trials come out terrible, and you feel like just giving up because they came out terrible. Because we forget you have to just go through all those trials over and over again, screwing up until you finally get one that looks better. Until you finally get one that gets a better result. And that's actually part of what I'm dealing with now that I think about it. This long-term issue I've been talking about does have a component where I have a tendency to give up early. I didn't get the result that I wanted in the first few tries, so screw it. I mean, this isn't going to work. I'm defeated already.
Yeah.
And that's where it's important to remember. No, that's not when you're learning stuff. When you're learning stuff, the first few tries just doesn't work. I mean, I remember when I first took piano lessons. My first year of piano lessons were horrible. I mean, it sounded terrible. It just really sounded bad. But by year 6, I sounded pretty good. Yeah. I had to get through those first few years in order to get to the latter years. But once I got through them, I was actually making music. It sounded good. It sounded nice. It was pleasant to listen to. People could sing to it if they wanted to. So I got there. But I had to go through that first part. Never would have gotten to the second part if I didn't go through the first part.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember.
That reminds me of my my oldest daughter, we swore that we're going to teach our kids how to drive a stick, and our little HHR is a stick shift. And so my husband took her, out to the parking lot at the high school or whatever a couple years ago. And, when you first start driving a stick, it's just,
oh, yeah.
it's not good. and she gave up after 10 minutes, I can't do it. And then there's been a couple of times when, her dad and I, have been like, oh, we're going to go to this party or whatever, a Christmas party or a New Year's party. You think you could pick us up or whatever? And there's been times where it's like, oh, well, we have the blue car or whatever. Could you drive, and she's like, oh, I know I could drive it if I had to. And I'm like, no, you can't. You don't. But she's a perfectionist. So she got frustrated right away instead of, so I'm just like, I keep telling her, we still need to take you out in the blue car and teach you how to drive a stick, cause my first car was a stick. So when there's that motivation, when you're 18, you're like, I'm going to learn to drive a stick cause I want to go places.
Right.
And this is all I got to do it in,
Right.
So I learned really quick, and I could eat a sandwich and smoke a cigarette and shift gears, 6 months later. Probably not the safest thing, but
probably not. No, not exactly the recommended way to learn. But
but
no, go ahead.
Yeah, well, just like you said, practice makes perfect. When you first try to drive a stick, you're gonna kill it, 50 times. Well, not that many times, but in every car that you get into that is a stick shift, there's a different ratio that you have to find for the clutch and the gas, and
this is true.
Even we've had this car for 4 or 5 years, and there's still times when both of us, will be at a stop sign and we try to go and we just kill it, it's like, oh my God. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
I haven't had a stick since before I met Louise, but I did have one back then and drove that car into the ground. It was a Nissan, but I had it almost brand new and got a lot of miles out of it. And I remember one particular trip, I drove that one a lot from Connecticut to Virginia because my parents had retired to a lake in Virginia, and it was a beautiful lake, a great place to go for a vacation. So summer vacation, guess where I was going? I was going to go visit the folks and spend time on the lake. Well, I'm driving the stick shift down, and it was a stick shift with no, because it was, well, actually there are sticks that have, cruise control. But this one did not have cruise control. So I was doing a 12-hour trip by myself, driving a stick with no cruise control. And that gets, you know what that's like on the leg. That gets really, really tiring, right? So, but it showed how determined I was to get there and how determined I was to learn how to drive the stick so I could do that. Well, fast forward a few years, and now I've got myself a nice Camry with power steering and cruise control and all the nice features and so forth. And I remember taking the first trip down, again, 12-hour trip. It's a long drive. I remember taking the first trip down, and I have it on cruise control, and we're just moving right along, and I'm realizing I don't hurt. My ankle doesn't hurt. My foot isn't exhausted because I'm not trying to hold the pedal down, all that kind of thing. I'm saying, hey, life is good. This is a great improvement right here, And all of a sudden, what used to be a long trip now seemed like a much shorter trip, all because I had gone through that. So my point is, I had to go through learning how to use the stick shift because that's all I could afford at that time. And then as time went on, I got to the point where I could afford the automatic stuff. And that actually got me to the point where I could appreciate the easier thing. The harder thing made me appreciate the easier thing. And I think that's what happens when we're learning a skill.
That contrast makes you appreciate the good days. So you had a not so great day today, and tomorrow might be amazing, and because you'll have that contrast, tomorrow will even be better.
Yes.
Because you have that, so that's where the contrast comes in. To me, contrast is that. It's also the lessons. It's also, I just feel, I always think about the story about the dog on the porch, and, a guy goes by and he's like, why is your dog, howling and carrying on? oh, there's a nail sticking up out of the porch and he's laying on it,
Sure.
The next day, why is your dog still howling? Oh, he's still laying on that nail. And eventually he gets up because the nail gets sharp enough and annoying enough that he gets up. And so to me, that's kind of it too. Like, if you hit bottom, there's nowhere to go but up,
This is true.
And for some people, that's what it takes. If they're just having a really bad time and they can't dig out of that hole, eventually they're going to hit bottom. And two things happen when you hit bottom. Either you're done here, or you start digging out of that hole and getting back. And there's so many people, like we've talked about it, like in The Secret and stuff, that have been homeless and been in that bottom of the barrel, bottom of the hole situation. And they dug themselves up, and in that they realized, wow, like there is so much opportunity here that I can take advantage of, instead of the opposite, like, oh, none of this matters, it just gets worse, nobody will help me, so I just think that there's so much in that contrast that we a lot of times try to just get away from, because we're trying to be positive all the time. And there's definitely some benefits in that. Of course, you want to get to the point where you're bouncing back from that quickly, but recognizing that, I think I told you a couple weeks ago, I was just having a fit about, my reselling business and how I just wanted to end it. And I was so burnt out and everything. And, I'm literally, that little kid, having the
throwing
fit,
the tantrum, right?
Talking to my husband, not blaming him, but just like venting and getting it all out. And the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm going, I'm so glad this is happening, because I know that there's better stuff on the other side of this. Like, I just need to release all this crap and get to that spot. And even in that, craziness or whatever, I still recognize that.
It's a great point. It's a point that Louis was making this morning, how we as human beings, we tend to want to treat certain things as bad and something to be avoided, and we're supposed to be positive all the time. When in fact, first of all, it's not real. Second of all, it's not even good for us. And the orientation that says that we should be positive all the time kind of misses the boat, because like you said, if you're positive, if you really could be positive all the time, you wouldn't be in any contrast, and without the contrast, you wouldn't have those big rockets. So you'd be kind of missing out on something. And the point I made to him, I wanted to run it by you to see what you think. Cindy Chavez taught me this. She said that she doesn't like to think about things in terms of positive or negative, in terms of good or bad. She likes to think about things in terms of preferred or not preferred. And she's kind of won me over to that one, because if you think about things that way, now it's not, okay, I ran into something that I didn't prefer, but it's not like I committed a mortal sin. It's not like, I did some horrible thing. It's not like some horrible thing happened to me. I just ran into something I didn't prefer. That's all. And with that perspective, first of all, that negative charge is gone, because I just don't prefer that. No, thank you. It's not like, oh God, this terrible mountain lion was chasing me. It's like, no, I just don't prefer mountain lions. That's all. Whereas when we're focusing on the preferred part, again, it's not like there's this huge, powerful, positive surge of, oh yes, I so much prefer this, although that can happen. It's more like I'm going with the flow no matter what's happening. Either way, what I prefer it, I don't prefer it, but either way, I'm just kind of going with the flow, and I am learning from it, and I am experiencing it, and I'm living it, and everything's good. Everything's good. It's all working out well.
I think that takes the drama out of it too.
Yeah.
Because when you just said that, I mean, of course, if you got chased by a mountain lion, you're going to go home and tell Louise about it, and you're going to talk about it, and it's going to be this dramatic thing. But if you just came out and said, I was on this walk, and I got chased by a mountain lion, I got away from him, and I really would prefer for that never to happen again.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, as ridiculous, I mean, you know what I mean? But that just takes all the drama out of it, because then you're not like, oh my God, what happened? You're just like, oh, okay, you don't prefer that. That's kind of weird, but okay, you don't prefer that. You'd prefer to just have a nice calm walk without any mountain lions.
There's a great example of that, because we get a lot of bear around here. We have bears all over the place here. And, that's something where if you tell the story about how, I was out on the walking path and I saw a bear crossing the path about 100 yards down, that sounds like a terrifying story. In actual fact, there's nothing terrifying about what happens because the bear's 100 yards away and he doesn't care about you. He's just trying to, get to where he's getting to. And you're just watching him across the path. There was nothing traumatic about it at all. But if you tell it to somebody who wasn't there, oh my God, there was a bear? Oh, that's so scary. Well, no, actually it wasn't so scary. We turned it into something scary. Like you said, we dramatize it, but that's just us. That's not the bear.
So my question to you, did you then turn around and go the other way or did you keep going?
I've done both. I have, under certain circumstances, I've turned and gone the other way. That's usually what I do. I can think of one case where the walking path goes by a wetlands, and I saw the bear, and the bear was heading over toward the wetlands. I knew where he was going. He wasn't going to hang out on the path. He was going over to the water. That's what he was there for.
Yeah.
So why not continue to walk? It's not like I was going to keep walking at him while he was still on the path. I was going to wait for him to leave the path, but he did, and I could see where he's going, so I just kept right on going. There was nothing to worry about there, Now, if it was a different situation, different scenario, different place or whatever, very often I'll turn around and just go the other way. But, you kind of gauge it based on what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, right?
Yeah.
And the main thing is you don't turn it into this big thing. Oh my God, there was a bear on the path.
Right. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Because like I don't like camping and stuff because of bears and stuff. I'm like and that's something I don't prefer. Like my husband, he would love if we were like out tent camping and hiking all the time. And I'm like, Madison will go do that with you, which is our daughter, go, like they're going to Costa Rica next spring together and they're going to go zip lining and all this cool stuff and go see the ruins. I have no desire. I don't prefer that at all. And he tends to get like, well, we should really do more stuff together. And I'm like, there's stuff that we really enjoy doing together, but I'm not going zip lining. Like that's not on my preference sheet at all.
Right.
I'm scared of heights. I'm okay with that. There's nothing I need to do. I can get in an airplane and fly, so I'm good with that. So it's
I'll finish up because we're actually past our time, but I'll finish up with a little story from when I was in my early teens. My family did quite a bit of tenting across the country as a way of traveling. And I remember one time we were in Yellowstone Park, and it was night. We were in the tents. We were asleep, 2:00 in the morning, and we hear this sound outside. My sister opens up the tent flap, looks out, and says, "It's a bear! It's a bear in our tent site!" And fortunately, she whispered it rather than shouting it, which was a good thing. And we just kind of lay there. I mean, there's not much you could do anyway, but it was pretty clear the bear was just looking for some food. And the food was packed away. The food was nowhere he could get it, so it didn't make any difference. So we just kind of waited it out, and about 20 seconds later, he lost interest and moved on. Now, that could have been a situation where, like, if she had shouted out loud, "There's a bear out there," I could see a bear getting all excited, maybe doing something, But as long as you don't get excited about it, it's no big deal. Law of attraction, right? You focus on what you feel. You focus on feeling as good about it as you can feel. You get a good result. That's what we got. So, that's the last thought for the day. That's all. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you, Shelly, for sharing your insights. I appreciate them. You gave me some good ideas to think about too. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you for having the podcast and having me on every week. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for our listeners as well, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.